Algebra 2, inverse of a function. Today we're going to look at the inverse of a function, which is simply when you reverse your x's and your y's. We've done this when we created our logarithmic parent function back on that activity, so this hopefully is not brand new. But we will be finding the inverse of a function and writing the equation of that function using function notation. So your notes are here at the top. We also have what is called a horizontal line test. This test is very similar to the vertical line test. But if you think about it, if we reverse x and y, instead of there being a vertical line, you would not want a horizontal line for the inverse. And I'll show you how that works in just a moment. And then finally, if a function can be inverted, we say it is, or if a function's inverse is also a function, we call it an invertible function. So we will use that language too in some of the exercises. This is a really short assignment, so this is a great opportunity for you to kind of get caught up if you've not done all your work. From here on, we're going to take late grades, guys. So you have basically 2 days, I think, from when I post this to have it in. After that, it's going to be a late grade. So let's try to get this one in on time. Hopefully, I'll get you in and out of here in under 30 minutes. That's my goal. All right, to find the inverse of a function, the first thing you're going to do, if it's written in function notation, is you're going to replace the f of x with a y. So I'm just going to rewrite this function. F of x equals negative 3x plus 6 is y equals negative 3x plus 6. The next step in the process is to reverse the x and the y. So the y becomes x and the x becomes y. So we'll say x equals negative 3y plus 6. So this is technically your inverse right here. But what we like to do is solve the equation for y. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number 1, to put it in function notation, you need your y to be alone on the left side. And number 2, if it's not a function, you sometimes can't really tell it's not a function until you solve for y. So you always want to solve for y. So how do we do that? Well, step 1, to get the y by itself, we would get rid of the plus 6 by subtracting 6. So in your next step, you should have x minus 6 equals negative 3y. And then the last step of solving for y is to divide everything by the negative 3. So again, I'm pressing new equation each time here. And that's going to give me a fraction. So let me just put a fraction in here. Let's see, x divided by negative 3 is negative 1/3 x. So I'm just going to write it that way. Negative 1/3 x. And then negative 6 divided by negative 3 is plus 2 equals, and then the negative 3 divided by the negative 3 is 1y. So you just get y. So now we have our function written with the y alone. Let's put this one in function notation. The inverse is a function because this is a linear function, y equals mx plus b. So let's start a new equation, and this time I'm going to do f, and then we'll do shift 6 and put the negative 1, which I hate the way that's so close together, so I'm going to hit a space there. And then we're going to go back down. Let's see, how do I do that? I guess I could hit shift 6 again. I'm not sure how to get out of this exponent. I don't know, it's getting worse. Just hit the right arrow to work. All right, and then x in parentheses. So that's how you write your function notation. And then you put the rest of the equation. So I'm just going to copy this one and paste it right here. You can just type it over. And there we're done. So that's how you do the inverse of a function. All right, the next one, we have g of x is equal to 1 over x. So let me just copy this one. Keep all my formatting the same. Makes life simpler. We'll replace our g of x with y. And this is a fraction, so I'm going to use my little fraction tool here in my toolbar and put 1 over x. I really like this one, by the way. It's kind of interesting. So now I'm going to switch my x and my y. So I've replaced my g of x with a y. And I'm going to switch the x and the y. So the y becomes x, and the x becomes y. These are so hard to deal with, these fractions. That's why I'm not giving y'all very many, because I know it's a pain. All right, now we're going to reverse. We've already reversed x and y, but we need to solve for y. Well, I don't really want y to be in the denominator. That's kind of a pain. So we're going to multiply both sides by y. So I'm going to copy this. So let's multiply by y and multiply by y. And that will get rid of the y in the denominator. You'll get xy is equal to 1. So xy equals 1. And then to get rid of the x, so that the y is by itself, you would divide both sides by x. But look what happens. My goodness. You get exactly the same thing you had to start. So the inverse of a rational function is y equals 1 over x. I don't know why I copied that one. That's not the right one. It's the same as your original function. So every rational parent function, or this rational parent function, I should say, is its own inverse. And it is a function, of course, because that's your rational parent function. So let's write this with function notation. I'm just going to go ahead and change this y to g inverse. So we'll do shift 6, -1, hit the right arrow before you hit the parentheses, and then put in your x. And this is your function in function notation. All right, the next one, we have a parabola, which is a quadratic function. So I'm just going to copy my last problem and type this in. So h of x will be y, so y equals 1/4. Using your fraction tool, you got 1 over 4. X squared. Shift 6 gives you an exponent. Now let's reverse the x and the y. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to change the y to an x and the x to a y. Oops. Okay, so now, somehow I lost my, see if I can undo that. I really want to undo that. It's not going to let me. Oh well. All right, shift 6. There we go. All right, now to solve for y, we're going to multiply both sides by 4. That'll give me 4x on the left. So 4x equals y squared. And then you're going to take the square root of both sides. Well, there's your problem. When you take the square root of 4x, you get plus or minus the square root of 4x. So to do plus minus, you can't just type plus minus. My other programs do that, but this one you got to go find it. So it's actually here in your toolbar. So plus minus square root of 4x equals y. Now the square root of 4 is 2, so we should probably clean that up just a bit. And I'm going to put the y on the left side. So I'll say y equals plus or minus 2, and we're going to take out that square root of 4, square roots of x. So this is your inverse. Now this time, oh no, I lost it again. Go back. There we go. Now this time we do not have a function. So I am not going to write this answer using h inverse of x because that's considered function notation. And since this isn't a function, I can't do that. Now why is that? Well, if you look in the graphing calculator at this, first of all, you can't type plus minus in a graphing calculator. What you have to do, and I'll put it in Desmos, is you get y equals square root of 2x. So I don't know how to do square root of 2. I think it's like that. Oh, no, it's not. I'll raise 2 to the 1/2 power. And then x. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here. I can't type in a Desmos, guys. I'm just not having it today. But anyway, let me just tell you what happens. We're going to move on from that. Y'all don't have to put this in the calculator. 2 square root of x. That's why I was typing it wrong. The square root of x is basically half a parabola. And so here you have the top half of the parabola and the bottom half of the parabola, and they're overlapping. So this is not a function. It fails the vertical line test. So you can leave it. And the inverse is not a function because every x is not unique. The 2 parts of the graph overlap. So just mention something about that, and that's why you're not writing it in function notation. All right, let's go on to question number 4. So now we're going to be doing most of the work in Desmos, which makes life a little easier. No, not as much typing here. For the next item, use the calculator at Desmos. If you can insert the graph, do it. If you cannot, just leave a note here saying why you can't. Like, I'm on a phone, I can't figure it out. I will say if you're on a phone, you can do a screenshot and just get your whole screen and drop it in here, and that would be awesome. So please, I hope somebody will do that because no one's done it yet. But if you'll do a screenshot on your phone, I mean, just Google how to do that. It's actually pretty simple. I use it all myself all the time for other things. But let's consider the power function f of x equals x cubed. I'm going to put f of x, oops, too many x's, equals x cubed. All right, so here is my cubic function. So sketch the graph in Desmos, write an equation for the inverse. Well, let's see, if you have x cubed, I'm just going to put it right here. We're going to change y, our f of x to y, x cubed. We're going to switch x and y, so I'm going to go ahead and switch them right now. So let's make this x and this one a y. And then we'll solve for y. Well, to solve for y, you'll take the cube root of x. So let's just put y equals the cube root, and I don't know if they have one of those. Oh, they do. So they have a little spot for the 3. And then we'll put x. And so we'll change this to f inverse. So I'm going to do shift 6. Put the little negative. Put the 1. Right arrow. Put your x. All right, I'm getting better at this. So this is my f inverse cube root. Now let's see if I can do this. This might work. So f inverse. Yeah, I'm not real sure how to do it. They've got a keyboard. Let's see if we can find it. Will they let me change this to a cube root? I don't know. I'm not going to be able to graph this, are we? Oh, look. There it is. Cube root. I can do it. So we're going to say g of x, or y, equals cube root of x. And there it is. So guys, you'll just click on this little keyboard down here and kind of play around, look for your functions under miscellaneous. I think is where I found it. Yeah, miscellaneous. So there you go. Got all kinds of stuff in here. All right, I'm going to close my keyboard. So now let's zoom in and look at this thing. It's very interesting. So the red graph is the original function, and the inverse is going this way. And let me show you another thing. I'm going to do y equals x. This is your parent function for linear. Let me scoot up here so you can see what I'm about to do. I'm going to change this one to a dashed line, and I'm going to make it orange. There you go. So what I want to show you is that the actual function itself, f of x equals x cubed, which was your red graph, and your function y equals cube root of x, which is your blue graph, are actually reflected over that line y is equal to x. So that's one way to quickly see if your function is an inverse or has an inverse, or what it would look like without actually having to create the equation to get it. So we'll have some of that in the exit ticket. You can just look at it and tell me which function's inverse it is by looking at how it's reflected over that line. So what I'm going to do, is f of x invertible? The answer is yes. The inverse is a function. So we need to answer that. And then I'm just going to paste this Desmos in here to answer all these other questions. So if you're on a desktop, that's a whole lot simpler, I know, but and I think everything else I've done, I've got the equation for the inverse, and I've answered question C, and the rest of it's on this screen. So let me just, I'm going to use my snipping tool. If you'll use the share button, it's in the top right of your Desmos, you can share out the graph if you can't get the equations in with it. That's really okay. You don't need those equations, just the graph. In fact, let me do it that way just to show you. So I'm going to go over here and click on, let me show you. I've got a share out right here. So I can share this out if I click on export. You can make the lines thick. You can make them medium. I like them thick. You can make a medium square, a large square. I don't really want a large square. I think I want a medium square. That looks really nice. And so I would download this, and then I will just save it. If you do a download, it's going to, see, mine's right here. Mine's going to open up a picture, and then it'll give me the option to copy it. So I'm just going to copy it and then paste it in my document. So there's lots of ways to transfer graphics. I really encourage you to play with those, because not only does it look better, but it saves you an enormous amount of work on these assignments. So the more you can get copy and paste out of Desmos, the simpler these assignments are. So please play with it. And I do have after school enrichment every Wednesday and Thursday, just like as always. We have a Google Meet, and we can do a screen share. You can show me your screen. I can talk you through it if you're on a desktop. And even if you're on a phone, you can get on and ask questions, and kids are figuring stuff out. So they can help you as much as me. So please show up on Wednesday or Thursday if you need help putting these things in your document. I want you to do it simply. I don't want you spending hours fighting with it. It's very frustrating, I know, because I'm the same way. I get frustrated as well. All right, so there we have it. I'm done with that problem. Now this problem is not going to have an inverse, and you can kind of tell why. You've got f of x equals x to the fourth. So let me get out of this and change this to x to the fourth, which means the fourth root is going to be your inverse, because you're going to switch x and y and solve for y. And if you'll put in keep your dotted line in here, you can still see how these are reflected over the line, but the fourth root is not going to show all of the answer. You really need a whole nother answer. So let me add another one. I'm going to say y equals negative, and then I'll copy this one, fourth root of x, because it has a plus or a minus. So there's two parts to it. The positive part goes up and the negative goes down. Put them together and you've got the original graph turned sideways. So this is not a function for question number 5. To write an equation for the inverse, you would just write y equals plus or minus the fourth root of x. So let me copy this one. We're not going to use f of x. We're not going to use the function notation because it's not a function. I'll put it here. So we'll say y equals, we do need a plus minus, so let's add that in there. Plus minus the fourth root of x. Is the function invertible? No. The inverse is not a function. Sketch the graph. Well, that was a lot simpler task since we had already sketched the first graph. We just had to make that little minor tweak to it. So let me see if I can find my color here. All right, so let's go back to Desmo. So look at my graph. I've got the original. I've got y equals the fourth root of x, and I've got y equals negative the fourth root of x. So I've got everything I need. I'm just going to copy this using my snipping tool. You can always use the share out button to copy the graph. The equations, really, you don't need them because you've already written all of them. All right, so I'm going to paste this. It says if it's invertible, sketch it, but I already did it. If I had just sketched this, that wouldn't have technically been the full inverse. It would have just been part of the inverse. And when you get into college algebra, we're not going to do this part because we have so much else that's more important. But if you do take the college algebra class, there will be something in that class about restricting your domain so that the function is invertible. So what you would do is you would restrict the domain of the original function to x greater than 0, and then only the part above the axis would have been there. So that's how you handle that. All right, let's go back to our document and see what we got here. Now, these 3 items are pretty simple. I included something I've never done before, so y'all tell me how this works. I made this into a drawing. I'm going to shrink that down so it's smaller. So down here at the bottom, you should now, if you're in your Google Doc, see an edit. So I'm going to use the edit button this time to show which functions are invertible. And the way we do that is by drawing horizontal lines. So in the first one, I could draw a horizontal line anywhere. And in here, it looks really flat, but it's really not flat, not completely. So this function, even though it's sort of, you can't tell, I can draw a vertical line anywhere I want. Let me draw one here so if I can get it as straight as possible. It's hard to make these straight on here. Let's see, that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to change the line color to something really bold and bright and make it really fat. There you go. So see, this is my vertical line. You can position it. You can pick it up and move. Oh, I don't want to do that. Undo. So what I would like to do, keep doing it, is draw vertical lines in here. Let's keep doing that. Now this time, if I draw a vertical line, oh, I know what I need to do. I need to get off of that and go to the pointer. So if I draw this vertical line here, you see I can make this vertical line intersect the graph 1, 2, 3 times. So this B is not invertible because the horizontal line intersects more than once. And then if you'll go to C, see when I close it, those lines stay in there. So if you go to C, the same applies. I can put a vertical line. For some reason, it's not letting me scroll down, guys, which is kind of annoying. I'm not sure why that is. Because I'm not full screen in this, but I'm trying to get it on this camera for you guys. So I'm going to let y'all do that one. But this third one, if you'll put a vertical line in there, a horizontal line in there, it's going to intersect twice up here. I think you can make it intersect 4 times down here. But it can only intersect once if it's a function that's invertible. So A is invertible because no horizontal line intersects more than once. And I misspelled invertible. It's got an I, not an A. It'll tell you that, thank goodness. A is invertible. B and C are not invertible. A horizontal line intersects more than once. So if you have a graph, it's just a simple yes/no question. And if you'll just draw horizontal lines on your graph, or if you can't draw because it's too hard, just tell me. You don't really have to. I think most y'all can just look at it and tell if that's so. All right, so A is invertible and the others are not invertible. All right, the next three, I'm going to let you do on your own. I will be happy to do them with you. If you want to come in and ask a question, I will do a Google Meet and we can do those together. But I do want you to start doing at least some of your assignments without me, because right now you're just getting hundreds for copying me. So we want to see if you can do a little bit by yourself. So just follow the procedure we used on the first three like this, where we had to change the f of x to a y, switch the x and y, and solve for y. And then see if you can write your answer in function notation if your function is invertible. And if it's not invertible, tell me why it's not invertible. Okay, guys, be sure to complete your exit ticket. When you are done with this document, be sure you watch the video. Of course, if you're not watching the video, you're not hearing what I'm saying right now. Complete all of the documents, submit when you are done. And how do you do that? You click on Mark as Done. Now, please note you have the option of adding or attaching work that you write on paper. So if you just really cannot handle the toolbar and the equations and it is frustrating you, please just write your problems on paper. You don't have very many here. Actually, you could probably fit every bit of this on one page. And you don't have to have a copy or printout of this document. You can just write your answers on notebook paper or regular paper. Take a photograph and attach it to this assignment. In Google Classroom, there is a little paper clip. If you will click on that paper clip, it gives you options of ways to attach your work. So just choose something in there and attach your work if you're not able to do the Google Doc. But whatever you do, be sure you do this on or before the due date so that you do not get a late grade. If you have any questions, leave a comment on your assignment. You can leave a private comment inside of your assignment if you don't want to say it in front of other students. Until then, we'll see you next time.